Broadcasting from the Any Hour Services podcast studios, I'm your host, Mike Wilson, and on this episode of In the House, we're going to be talking about dangerous electrical panels. Let's go. It's a catchy tune. I see you wanting to bob your head, dance along with me. In the House is a podcast about the major systems in the house: electrical, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. This week, I've got Gavin and Shane in the studio with me. They're managers over the electrical service department at Any Hour Services. You guys ready for Valentine's? Like, this is your last warning. No.
Not even close.
I'm never ready.
You're never ready.
Never.
Come on, you're
Like, is it one of those things you got your wife trained that, like, not to expect anything from you?
No, I've switched. So we've just barely switched that. So she used to buy all of her stuff.
Oh.
And I never got to. And so I told her she needs to stop that. So now she's stopped. Now I've got to stop.
Why would you do that?
Because she buys me stuff and I don't buy her anything. I feel horrible.
But you said she was buying herself the things from you.
Yeah, but
who's going to know what she wants better than her?
Yeah.
That seems like the perfect arrangement.
Nope.
Yeah, Gavin, you messed
Not
it
for
up.
me.
Be like, I love you so much. You take the money, buy whatever you want. Especially if they're like not big spenders. Like, I can understand if they were like, if she was like coming back with like, you know, new handbags and new wardrobes, and you're like, I'd really like to just be the one that like buys you Valentine's Day gifts. I feel like I'm missing out. But like, if she's not like overspending, like going crazy, like be like, I think I'd like want to encourage that arrangement. What do you think you're missing out on, Gavin?
Giving the gift.
Wow.
You're going to be in there with the rest of us at Sam's Club or Costco on the Valentine's Day, and there's 500 men, and they don't know what they're buying.
Do you wait to the last minute, Shane?
Yes.
Every year.
Usually. How about you?
I don't do Valentine's.
Really?
Does your wife?
I don't think so.
Not that you know of?
I would think I would know. I don't know. Okay, so now I got to explain, because I sound like a jerk when I say that to every woman out there. When guys hear it, they're like, oh, that sounds like a good arrangement. So we decided together, this is something we decided together, after a few years of her being very disappointed. So there's so many holidays, and I'm like, I have a hard time expressing more love to you on one day a year than I do already, like the rest of the year. I don't love you more today. I like love you a lot all the time. I don't understand why I've got to like go that much more above and beyond, you know, for that one day. There's this part of me that's like, really, we need a holiday for love? Like, do you not like, I can understand if you're like in a relationship and you don't get a whole lot of love all the time. And that's the one day a year you wait to like, oh, he does love me. But like, I love you all the time. And so anyway, we decided, and this was, again, don't hate on me. Don't hate me. This is something we came up with together. That's how relationships work. You figure out what works for your relationship, and this is what works for ours. She got to choose her birthday or Halloween, or not Halloween, her birthday or Valentine's Day. And like, she chose her birthday. I was like, okay, cool. That's so I don't have to, there's like zero pressure for me to like, you know, do anything on Valentine's Day, or like I like to call it Tuesday. Cause guess what? I loved her last Tuesday.
So basically, she just didn't want to be disappointed, so you set up this thing. So, I get it.
That's yeah, pretty much it. Like, I don't know if it like came down to it, because like she's like, and I get it. It's hard because like, you know, her friends are like getting flowers. Oh, maybe I won't tell that story. She got so mad at me one time for like getting her flowers that she canceled the order. Like I went to like 1-800-flowers.com and like ordered flowers. And she like saw the charge come through on the credit card. She called and canceled it. And I was like, she's like, I'd rather you buy me flowers at Costco. I was like, I wasn't going to go to Costco. I thought flowers was the gesture, and I was trying to like do something. She's like, and then we got in a fight over me buying her flowers. So like, fine, choose your birthday or Valentine's Day. It's not how it went, people. Don't judge me. She loves me, and I love her every Tuesday. Okay, so So I don't have to. I won't be in Costco, Shane,
Okay.
wondering what to get for her.
Well, try Costco instead of 1-800-Flowers, and she might like them. Give it a shot. It's worth it.
No thanks. And so now every time I want to buy her flowers, I have to stop myself. Because I'm like, oh, wait, is this going to cause a fight? Is she going to think something's going on? Like, oh, why you get me flowers all of a sudden out of the blue? Like, I'm just trying to restart a new tradition. I hear the women like that. Like, what? You do something? Electrical panels. Dangerous electrical panels. It's as dangerous as like buying my wife flowers. Okay, so tell me, what do you mean by a dangerous electrical panel? Like what makes it dangerous?
So a lot of times it's the age of the panel.
Okay.
Some of the older panels are not as bad as others. We've just found over time some of these panels they put in like in the 60s and 70s. At the time, it was the best they had. We found over the years that there's a lot of parts that fell on them. So some of it's that, just age sometimes too. Age can also be a danger if they're in there too long, wrong breakers.
So what goes wrong? Like what makes it dangerous? What fails? What are these things that
So
go out?
there's a couple things that fail. There's actually inside the panel itself. You can get arcing and burning in there. You can get bad connections. But then you can also have panels that you think are completely safe because they never trip, but they're actually just as dangerous because they're not doing what they're supposed to. The only reason you have a breaker in a house is when you're pulling too much power or there's a direct short, it's just going to turn off to save your house, to save your wiring. So those are the two main things, panel failure itself or just breakers not doing what they're supposed to.
And I mean, is that something that it's just age that determines it, or is it a brand? Because you mentioned like things that were installed a long time ago, but like what is it that what do people need to like know about?
So we can get into specific brands.
Do it.
Let me do this real quick, Kevin. So there's some panels we really watch out for.
Okay.
There's one called Zinsco. It's got colored breakers on it. Some are green, some are red, some are orange.
And that's not because they're old. That's not discoloration.
That's not discoloration.
They thought like, okay, we'll make 15 amps 20, or we'll make them red. And then you got like that little light blue color and the green color. Yeah, okay, I got you.
So Zinsco is one that we're really looking at.
How do you spell that? Spell it for people.
Zinsco.
Okay.
Zinsco.
Zinsco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if you have a panel, and you can also go online, pull up Zinsco panels. There's also a website out there called My Panels Safe, where you can see .com, where you can see a lot of these. There's another one called Federal Pacific. It's had a lot of problems over the years. Pushmatic has had a lot of problems. But as we're talking about breakers, there's a lot of old breaker box like Unicorn. Who's heard of a Unicorn or Frank Adams, Wadsworth? There's a lot of crazy
is like nowadays is like, oh, you've got a unicorn panel.
It's a $1 billion panel, huh?
Right? It's like, whoa, I got a unicorn panel? It's special.
Yeah.
Yeah, it lights you on fire.
Sparkly.
Yeah. So nowadays,
Sparkly.
so there's been a lot of panels over the years. Nowadays, there's really 4 main panels we do use. So we use one called Square D. We use one called Cutler Hammer, Siemens, GE. Those are the big main 4. There's some other ones out there that are out there, but those are at least here in Utah, those are the 4 main panel boxes we use.
So with the Zinsco and the Federal Pacific and Pushmatic and things like that, did they all have the same problem, or did they each have a unique problem, like something that was unique to that particular brand?
I think they had, I don't know that if they were unique, but breakers not tripping when they needed to, so they were just giving power, heating up the wire, and just causing problems. The way that, like with the Federal Pacific, the way that the breaker attaches to the panel,
To the bus bar?
it's not that great. It's not a very good connection. So,
And loose connections causes arcing. Arcing causes heat. Get fires that way.
yeah.
Yeah, so like these panels, we call them obsolete panels because they can't even make them anymore because there were lawsuits and all kinds of things where they used to have a UL rating, which is Underwriters Laboratory, which is the kind of the, regulating body's stamp of approval saying this is safe, and they lost their UL rating because of all of the issues and the fires and things that happened with those. As you were sitting there, listing that thing off, I'm sitting here thinking one of the best things you could probably do if you want to know if your panel is safe is go look at the brand of your panel and then just Google it. Mm-hmm. You could even say problems with, and then whatever your brand is, and see if it is. Because I mean, if you say problems with Cutler hammer, you're going to find technicians that just prefer square D. But there's nothing wrong with a Cutler hammer, breaker and panel and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, go and look at what especially if it's older. Tell me, because there used to be, before there were breaker panels, there were fuse panels with the little screw-in fuses. Are those like less safe than panels? Like, talk to me about that.
The biggest problem with fuses, they're called a time delay fuse on most of them. They don't trip really fast. And back when they used fuses, there wasn't a lot of wiring in homes. That was usually 30s, 40s, into the 50s. And if you can think back that far, if you're even alive back then, what did they have in homes? Were there microwaves? No microwaves, really no TVs, no dishwashers. So back then, they didn't have a lot of stuff. So the biggest problem we see with fuses is over the years, when the electrical hasn't been redone, they just put a bigger size fuse in there. So it started out as a 20, and now it's a 30 amp fuse, and if it's still tripping, so they put a 35 amp in there. So then they start running way too much on the wires than the wire is capable of holding. So that's when those become dangerous. So if you have a fuse box, I would get somebody out there to take a look just to make sure you are safe.
I'd also say if you've got one of those older panels and you look up the name and you see what the potential issues are, like have an electrician come out there and look at it and at least give you a price to replace it, because with those it's not a matter of if it's going to fail, it's a matter of when. But when you were talking about upsizing the fuse to avoid those nuisance trips, unfortunately I've seen electricians go in and do the same thing with breakers. So in our previous electrical episode we did was with on space heaters, and we didn't even talk about this, but if you've got a space heater that you plug in and it's like tripping a 15 amp breaker, if you have an electrician that comes in and be like, well, we could upsize that to a 20, run the other way, unless he can prove to you that there's actually already 12 wire that is complete with that circuit or something.
Actually, make him run the other way. You stay there.
That's a very good point, Shane.
Okay, just clarifying.
Shane coming in with the good advice save there. Thank you, sir. But yeah, that's not a good solution. Actually, how many times it's dark in this room, instead of getting 25 watt bulbs, let's go with some 45s or 60 watt bulbs. And then it's they make 100 watt bulbs, and not realizing that your light fixtures, or at least they used to, I'm sure they still do, but they used to have a sticker on there that said what they were rated for. And excuse me, the reason is because the higher the wattage, the more electricity is pulling, it's going to cause more heat. Same thing with the wires in the wall. If you've ever, I can't tell you how many of those ceiling fixtures you pull down and it's all brown and the wires are brittle and burnt. It's oh yeah, it says here 40 watt bulbs. How long you been running these hundreds?
20 years.
Anyway, yep, exactly. So anyway, what is there anything, let's say that is there anything that people might be experiencing that's like a warning sign that hey, I got an old panel? You mentioned earlier, if your breakers never trip. I mean, that's not necessarily, a bad thing, but are there I don't know, lights flickering, I don't know, what are there signs that you have a bad panel that you might notice that you don't realize that that's because you've got a bad panel, because maybe you've been dealing with it for 15 years?
Flickering lights is the biggest thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was just making that up.
No, I'd say that all the time. People's wondering why their lights are flickering, and you go in and there's wires that have over the time got loose, and so they're just arcing. They're not providing as much power as you need.
But is that a sign of the panel being bad or like a loose connection in the fixture?
It could be. So the breakers could get loose. There's all kinds of things that could get loose in there.
That's the thing with electrical. Like, you never know exactly where that problem's coming from. So any of these signs, you got flickering lights, you hear popping or crackling, things are warm to the touch. Like, you might want to like have those things checked out. It shouldn't necessarily be that way. Yeah. And every time I say that, like, oh, go around and fill your, outlets and switches. You always get that one guy who's like, what if it's a dimmer? Dimmers are supposed to be
It'll
warm.
be warm.
Like, got me there. Yep, you're right. Let's not go check anything because a dimmer is going to be warm. Yeah.
But as Mike was saying, there breakers. You can touch a breaker. It's not dangerous to touch the front of it. But if you do feel quite a bit of heat coming off one, that could be a sign of some kind of a connection in there that's going bad, or it's pulling too much. Also, smell. We all have noses, unless you have coronavirus and can't smell. But if you don't have coronavirus and can smell, electrical burning has a very distinct smell. And if you ever smell that, especially around a panel box, get somebody out there as quickly as you can to get that checked out.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned feeling the breakers. I know when I used to run service calls, I had a laser thermometer, and that was one of the things that I'd always try and get to the panel, because that's the heart of the electrical system. And we'd actually, take our laser gun and like laser each breaker, and you'd think like, oh, they'll all be the same temperature, but some of them might be reading 20, 30 degrees hotter or worse. Room temperature is what they should be operating at. And then you find loose neutrals, you find all kinds of loose connection, the hot wire on the actual breaker, like all kinds of things. And so, yeah, temperature is a really good warning sign. And I mean, honestly, like a good electrical inspection, if your home is over 15, 20, 30 years, it's good every once in a while, every 10 years or so, like have an electrician come out and actually go through your system, because safety standards change. They may have come up with different devices. I mean, every 10 years, your smoke detectors are no good anymore. You're supposed to replace those. But like having someone go and check those connections and look for those signs, they've got the tools. They do it day in and day out. Any electrical company should be willing to, if you call them up and be like, hey, I just want to get an electrical inspection, a check of my system to make sure that it's okay. Any company should be. Again, if that company's not willing to come and give you an electrical inspection, have them run the other way. Any other major things they need to watch out for with panels? Or is it mainly just check the brand? And if you notice any of these other signs, like have it checked out?
Have it checked out. Also, our company here, we really stand behind this 25 years. If it's over 25 years old, have it looked at. You can replace whole panel boxes. Sometimes your panel box isn't good enough shape that maybe you just change out the breakers. So we always first, when we're changing stuff out, we always try to change the panel out if you're having problems. But there are other ways to make panels safe. So, but like Mike said, it's the heart of your electrical system. That's the brains of everything. That keeps you safe.
Was the heart or the brain? Those are two different organs.
It can be both. I think, yeah, heart and brain.
It's the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow. All right, cool. Well, that's the show. If you got any questions, feel free to leave us comments. I'll get them over to Shane and Gavin. They can answer those for you, and we'll get back to you on that. We'll be back next Tuesday with a new episode of In the House. If you'd like to learn more about Any Hour Services, visit anyhourservices.com. I've been your host, Mike Wilson, and you've been listening to In the House.